Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 107 of Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. And my guest tonight has joined me on a recent episode of Humanity versus Insanity, and he also joined the speakers panel at the recent AV9 event. And there we have Mark Steele, who I introduced as the head of the Geordie Mafia. And also made the observation that we might have to consider putting subtitles beneath the DVD of his presentation there. And if you want to catch his AV9 presentation along with all the others, then the AV9 DVD sets are in the final stages of editing and approval by the speakers, and they are scheduled to be distributed on Monday, the 2nd of July. And there is a pre-distribution offer, which is, I believe, $59.99. It's a saving of some £10 or so. And these are the three websites that the discs are currently available from. AlternativeView.co.uk, ukcolumn.org, or ianrcrane.com. Right. So, before we actually join Mark, let me show you a short clip from a news report broadcast from California. And this is in reference to the arrival of 5G-ready phone masts in the suburb of Piedmont. So, take a look at this.
Cell tower going up in your neighborhood? If it's not now, it may soon. Wireless carriers are installing millions of them across the country to enable the new, faster 5G cell phone technology. But tonight, Julie Watts asked the question you're not supposed to ask. Are there legitimate health concerns?
It's keeping John Heestand up at night. This new pole outside his bedroom window where Verizon will soon install a next-generation cell tower, just feet from a school.
This would be a big tower pushing out radiation outside of our bedroom window, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for many years.
It's called a small cell or distributed antenna system, similar to this one in San Francisco. The industry says they're safe. Many in Piedmont aren't convinced.
Our daughter is a cancer survivor.
13-year-old Sophia has been one of many petitioning the city council to deny this cell tower and others.
I'm also a brain cancer survivor, and I am against the cell towers.
I mostly talked about my cancer and how it affected me.
But according to federal law, the city simply can't consider health concerns. It's outlined in this small section of the Telecommunications Act, based on science from 1996.
To turn your phone on or off.
Back when this was the height of technology. But if cities do consider health, the cell companies can sue. So with few legal arguments to deny a cell tower, they're popping up outside bedroom windows and school campuses, despite objections from across the country.
5G can be a tremendous boom to California, but only if it can be put up quickly and easily.
Hayward Assemblymember Bill Quark co-authored legislation that would make it even harder for cities like Piedmont to object to a tower.
You wouldn't have to go through the Planning Commission, through the City Council.
The former NASA scientist says he may resurrect the bill recently vetoed by the governor.
I know scientifically that putting up these cell phone towers is safe.
But the International Association of Firefighters disagrees. They began opposing cell towers on fire stations after firefighters complained of health problems.
These firefighters developed symptoms.
Dr. Gunnar Heuser conducted a pilot study on firefighters at a station with cell towers.
And the symptoms included problem with memory, problem with intermittent confusion, problem with weakness.
Heuser says their brain scans suggest even low-level RF can cause cell damage, and he worries about more vulnerable groups like kids.
So we found abnormal brain function in all of the firefighters we examined.
So, following lobbying by firefighters, Quark and his co-author exempted fire stations from their bill, making them one place cell companies couldn't put a tower. This is the first piece of legislation that I think anyone's aware of where somebody got an exemption because they were concerned about health. Did they tell you at all about the study?
All I know is that when the firefighters ask, I do what they ask me to do.
Because they're strong lobbyists.
Yes.
So if, say, school teachers and parents had a strong lobby and they asked you to pass something that would prevent these from going up in your schools, would you do that?
If I couldn't get the votes any other way.
So there you have it. I think that we can safely observe that the individual speaking there was the archetypal political whore who is not motivated by the safety of the community that he represents. He is solely motivated by whether or not he gets re-elected. And of course, it is most probable that he's being lobbied extensively, which normally means bribed, by the 5G telecoms companies. Now, Mark, one of the most disturbing observations in that short clip was the observation that legislation dating back to 1996 means that the cities or the communities in California cannot sue, the cities in California, their planning committees cannot consider the health issues. So in other words, they cannot deny permission to put up phone masts on the basis of concerns about public health. And if they do, then the telecom companies can sue. So this is the absurdity of the corporatocracy that is emerging in the Western world, is it not?
Most certainly is, Ian. It's absolutely appalling, and that chap really should be in prison. And what I mean by that, some NASA scientist, I don't know if he's a real scientist or not. He's obviously got some certificates to tell people he's a scientist, but he's not a scientist. A scientist's main function is to be able to assess.
Well, I think a scientist or anybody else actually prostitutes themselves once they get into politics.
Oh, most certainly. Well, but I mean, a scientist doesn't have any excuse here. Lay persons have excuses. They don't know, didn't get the right education. That chap's a criminal. He's not a politician. He's a criminal. What he needs to be behind bars. His children will die. People will be hurt, and cancer increases across that whole part of the world due to their inaction in relation to this particular 5G criminal rollout.
Now, Mark, you are right now absolutely on point. You're doing an outstanding job of encouraging people to do their own research on this issue of 5G. And, unfortunately, it's perhaps a bit late in the day, as it were, for the general public to become aware. And, and that awareness has been increased exponentially by the awareness that the removal of trees is linked very much to the 5G rollout. And in fact, in Piedmont, the local authority that was the subject of that news broadcast is also losing its trees. And it's if you like, a council within the wider San Francisco area that effectively is autonomous, but it's like Sheffield. It's a tree-lined community. And the 5G requirement is a transmitter every 300 meters with nothing that could possibly block those signals. Now, you have effectively titled your discussion tonight, "The Unlawful 5G Rollout, the Paradigm Shift in Product Development, Ignoring Current Standards and Guidelines, Not Risk Assessed." Now, and I know that we're going to be covering a lot of issues tonight, and we do have the opportunity for a bit of an extended program. So one of the concerns that you have is the relationship between the decimation of aphids, bees, birds, and the fact that this is not yet being linked to radio frequency.
It's really concerning, and the mainstream narrative is basically they're blaming nicotinides and the agriculture. Now, we're not saying that pesticides don't have a link, but I can tell you now, in the 70s, when they were spraying DDT on the fields, which is extremely toxic, we didn't have this complete collapse of small flying insect populations. But if we just go back to the nicotinides argument, wasps, bees, and moths, small flying insects, a lot of butterflies live in woods, not on arable land. A lot of moths, protected moths in particular, live in bushes around people's homes, towns, and villages. And as I can testify, anybody that lives in Gateshead, where we've had these 5G transmitters rolled down, any flying insects attracted to the LED street lighting, as they are annihilated by the 25 milliwatt transmitter. Put that into context, the maximum I can expose a 14-stone male to is what? 25 times the amount of radiation from a transmitter that has a very large footprint, anything from 5 to 12 kilometers. That's what the manufacturer says. That's in its basic form, not as a phased array antenna, because we'll come on to that in a moment. These transmitters, 25 milliwatt, like I said, are 25 times what a full 200-pound male can be exposed to. So you can see, quite easy for everybody to see or notice that flying insect population don't have a chance. In fact, if anybody stands outside of a newsagent shop, you'll notice there's many wasps coming out of those bins where the kiddies throw their sweet wrappers and their pop bottle tops. They have been annihilated. I mean, you do see them in the countryside, but people living in towns with this 5G experimental, unlawful experiment, by the way, is being carried out, you won't see any. And that's what we're seeing exactly here.
But of course, we don't have to worry, do we? Because the likes of Monsanto are working with the artificial intelligence organizations to develop android pollinators. I know. This is the absurdity. It is effectively not just the culling and potential annihilation of all human life. It's the annihilation of all life, so that the planet can effectively be the domain of artificial intelligence. And that may sound like it's something out of a sci-fi novel, but of course it's exactly where Ray Kurzweil, the director of engineering for Google, envisions that the Earth will be, within a century. But, obviously it's an opportunity, humanity to step up to the plate. And we have a number of scientists that are calling for a moratorium on 5G. And in fact, a report that I shared with you earlier this week from Cindy Russell, and her conclusion in that report is that there should be a worldwide moratorium on this technology pending further research into the negative health impacts. But Mark, what's the reality? Is that really likely to happen?
Well, I think if enough people make enough noise, then it will have to happen. And that's what we're starting to see in the Gateshead area. We've got significant numbers of children being hurt. People are starting to wake up to the fact that this 5G, that the council, by the way, have denied rolling out on top of us unlawfully. They have denied it completely. But I'm pretty positive that something's going to happen. There's absolutely no way, no matter who you speak to, 5G is an existential threat to the environment, to the economy in particular. Obviously, people with money will not benefit from having it decimated in a population who died. There's no money in killing off the population. There's no money in damaging the environment. I mean, the Victorians worked that one out. That's why they planted a lot of the trees that are being pulled out now there. it wasn't just the fact that they wanted to put parks and nice trees around streets. They put them there for a reason. They actually reduced the toxicity level. And if I was to train a man to do a job and he dies or he's sick and he can't come to work, then there's no profit in it. So we look at it in particular from a profit.
But Mark, the argument of that is that the last two shows we've had Dr. Graham Downing on, and we've been looking at the effective culling of the population. I mean, the official UK statistics show that we had 11.3% more deaths in the first 16 weeks of 2018 than the average in the first 16 weeks over the previous 5 years. Now, 11.3% is very, very significant, particularly as it wasn't a particularly cold winter and there was no virulent flu outbreak. And it wasn't the usual suspects of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It was people right across the age spectrum with a significant increase in those in their 30s and 40s. So, and then, I've just been looking at a report that was published a few days ago, which shows that, in the eastern and western seaboard states and across the states like Texas, the number of white births is now significantly below the number of white deaths. So, when we start to look at the fall in the population, which is not being explained, we know that there's massive infertility. We know that, women, particularly in the developed world, are having their first child now in their late 30s. So, we know that's a factor. We know fertility is a factor. And now what we're describing is effectively an agenda which does certainly not have the best interests of humanity at heart. So if one extrapolates that, there's obviously got to be some other game plan, and it's not about commerce.
Well, I think what happens, Ian, there's a lot of conflicting issues going on. Obviously, there's lots of theories out there, but I like to try and stick to the science. And, what we need to try and understand really is, what is 5G and where does it come from? There's a lot of confusion about it. What I'm going to tell everybody, 5G means more. Main fundamental definition of 5G is more. And where it becomes different, if we go to the next slide, where it becomes different is the antenna design. The antenna design is sophisticated, and where it actually came from, it comes from the battlefield. It's for battlefield interrogation, it's beamforming, it's for data acquisition, and it's to actually locate targets on the battlefield. That's what it is. And I want people to look. This device on the left-hand side called Mammoth, it was a German device, and this was the first phased array used during the Second World War to locate Allied aircraft. This was extremely problematic to air crews, because obviously it's a phased array antenna and it punches out a signal. It had a 200-mile reach. Now, what's the reason why I'm bringing this up? After the Second World War, the GPO came back to the UK, put up a lot of wooden poles around the country at great expense, and ran signals through a cable. They did that for a reason, because these signals from these arrays had already proven to be extremely hazardous to human biology. Consequently, they realized that you couldn't just put transmitters up all over the place as they are today, because they knew there would be some significant detrimental effect. That was during the war. Now, if you see the next picture, that's a very sophisticated piece of weaponry. And it's, like I said before, it's for battlefield interrogation. The picture on the right, I want everybody to have a good look at this picture on the right. one previous to that, Ian, yeah. Before we get to the ships, the one previous to that, you'll see there's the image on the right hand side. That's actually a phased array antenna system. If you look at the two little lobes on the bottom, the blue lobes, this is what's classified as collateral damage to your own side. And I believe this is the main cause of PTSD. The guy in the comment before that you just ran in the video showing brain damage. Well, what this will show, the troops coming back from these battle zones will suffer brain injury, actual brain injury that occasions them have psychological trauma, depression, and increases the suicide rate. But more troops returning from these battlefield areas committing suicide than what were ever killed on the battlefield. So this is a catastrophic event. The next picture, Ian, shows some, this is it in action. These are phased array systems, radar, act as radar, but most certainly double up as weapon systems. Brundum, The Secret History of Silicon Valley, I suggest everybody have a look at that and do your own research. Don't take my word for it. A guy called Brundum recognized that these type of weapons and signaling systems could revolutionize the battlefield. And what we're seeing today is autonomous vehicles. And the reason for that, this is it on all platforms, whether they be tanks, ships, planes, all automation, is because humans can't. The risk to humans on the battlefield is so high, we're moving into autonomous warfare due to the fact that, the significant damage that these signal systems can cause to humans.
Now, Mark, I was speaking to someone the other day who had served in the military and had served as a stint on the Cyprus listening station, and apparently it's the Cyprus assignment is limited. I can't remember how much by, but it's not a normal assignment because of concerns over the exposure by the operators working at the listening station. And apparently this was picked up by the military. And what they do is they make sure that these people are selected from all over the country so that there is no, if you like, pocket of the illness of the PTSD, and that it's just not picked up. It's all just a one-off here, a one-off there. Whereas if they all came from, one regiment in one area, then it might be picked up sooner rather than later. And of course, this is how the concerns are effectively concealed from the public.
Yeah. Well, this next image, Ian, the next slide shows. This is some latest research. The next slide is 6. Yeah. This research shows, without doubt, this is an assessment of military personnel on the battlefield, identifying a conclusive link between signal systems and cancer. And this research demands the reclassification of microwave radiation signals to a Group 1, an IERC Group 1. This research came out of Israel and it assessed a number of troops from different parts of the world who've been working in battlefield areas. So this is a conclusive link to these devices being fully carcinogen to humans.
Yeah, now this is a report from February of this year. And as you say, it looks at troops from 3 countries. And let me just quote one sentence for you. In Belgian radar battalions, the HLPF was 8.3% versus 1.4 in the control battalions, as shown in a causes of death study, and HL cancer mortality. HL being, is that high level?
Yeah, it's extremely high level. So consequent. I mean, if you look at the next image, Ian. I'm going to draw people's attention first to the picture on the right-hand side. This is the MIMO, this is your 5G. This is the same as the equipment on the battlefield. And what you can see in the picture on the right is these phased array 3D mapping, because that's what they're really doing. They're 3D mapping your home environment. You see the phased array beams there, the picture in the right-hand side. That's actually 3D mapping. Now, you're at the end of the target reach there. So basically, those humans living in those flats are the target. So that's not side lobe exposure, where we've seen all this brain injury and mental health issue. This is full-on, weaponized microwave radiation pouring into those households. And the picture on the left-hand side actually basically shows that these signal systems from these new phased array 5G transmitters are going to focus microwave radiation signals at people. This is a weapon system. It's coming to a town near you. We already have it in Gateshead. It's not fully operational yet. However, the fallout on the spectrum alone, I was told by a nurse on Saturday, 2 people in the street behind me have developed brain cancer. One lady, unfortunately, dropped down dead at a party. She was dancing. They thought it was a stroke. And she's then, in the post-mortem, it's been shown that it was actually a massive brain cancer. There's another guy lives in the same street as one of these small 25 milliwatt transmitters outside his bedroom window. He's developed cancer of the skull. So, this is real. We have a catastrophe on our hands. This information is absolutely unbelievable. But it's true. I mean, we're actually seeing this, and we've got central government going to roll this technology out right across the country. The next slide actually reinforces the fact that 5G, the 5G year in South Korea, is in fact being used and tested to shoot wild boar. Anybody wants to look at the Grundman weapon systems, there's articles in the public domain, you can go and have a look at them. And this is what these microwave radiation and these sophisticated high gain antenna design, that's what they do. They shoot things. So, we know what 5G is. I think it's only central government that haven't exactly worked it out. However, I think they may have worked it out because I was supposed to do a talk at Northumbria University with the government's expert in the Northeast on 5G. When it became apparent he was going to be standing on a platform next to me, central government told him he couldn't stand up at a lecture and discuss his idea that there's any benefit from this 5G. Because I can be absolutely 100% sure here, no benefit at all. In fact, this is economic terrorism. This is an attack on the country. I don't know who's exactly behind it, but believe us, they're not working for the benefit of this country.
But it's not just an attack on this country, Mark. I mean, this is being rolled out globally. Yeah. And in fact, across Europe, we have the 5G signalling system for European railways, which is scheduled to be switched on the back end of 2020. So that's why Network Rail are looking to cull some 10.9 million trees from around the nation's railroad networks because the signalling system and the next move, which is to autonomous trains, driverless trains, need to have uninterrupted 5G signals. So basically, all the trees that have been screening the railway lines from the housing estates, etc., that sort of back right up to them, now they, if they're not train spotters, then unfortunately the beautiful screen of trees that has protected them from the railways for the past 100+ years is now being pared right back. And of course, at the moment, the British government's put an effective moratorium on the culling of the trees, or so it says, as has Sheffield Council, of course. But my sense is that this is related to the fact that what they're trying to do is just ease back off the gas a little bit, because there was just a little bit too much interest in the relationship between the tree culling and the rollout of 5G. And so they've eased back off the gas, and then when they think no one's looking, they'll restart the tree culling program. And of course, it's not just Network Rail, it's not just Sheffield, it's not just the UK, it's right across the planet. This 5G rollout would appear to be an assault on humanity, and as you say, using battlefield technology as an assault on humanity. So let's have a look at this next graphic here, because this clearly shows what the phased array 3D mapping will reveal about the homes that are in the firing line.
Well, this is the obviously the government understand this is the capability of these high gain phased array antenna. This is what they can actually see into your home. It's a class 1 cancer causing radiation, and people will ask, well, why would government want to be able to spy on every single person? Well, it's basically to backhaul all of the data out of your home, and how they're going to do that by 2020. Radio frequency identity tags. If we go to the next slide, it shows by 2020 there will be 25 billion of these tags. They're already putting them in clothing today, so you can be tracked in your own near locality from that transmitter outside of your bedroom. Now, the reason why they've put them in close proximity in streets and towns, it's for autonomous vehicles geolocating themselves. Somebody at some technology company who wants to deliver you a pizza, it has to the drone has to have a local geo positioning system. You can't use satellites when the weather's down, so they need to have them very close by. All emitting is class 1 cancer causing radiation. But here's the real reason. Every single product coming into your home, the barcode will be replaced by radio frequency identity tag. Now, what's really interesting about this for everybody, because no one's safe here, the government are rolling out hundreds of thousands of MIMO tanks, the things we saw in the picture before that focus the phased array and the phased array signal at you. They're rolling out hundreds of thousands across the country. If you have RFID tags in your pantry, so in your Weetabix boxes, your pop bottle boxes, etc., it's basically a dormant reflective tag. It means that that MIMO tank has to fire a far larger radiation signal at it the further you are away from it, so it can reflect the signal back. Because it talks to that empty box or box 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the government will know exactly what you're bringing into your home, exactly what you're using. If you put this in the wrong bin, you'll get an automatic fine. If you put it in the right bin, you'll then get an advert on your smart TV for a replacement. Now, your local authority in that secret, spooky, smart city contracts, and the reason why I don't get a look at these contracts or see any of the other details in the telecoms partners that I have, because it's all interlinked with this RFID tagging, spying basically in breach of your human rights today and in breach of the law. This is illegal. It's illegal activity that's been rolled out across the whole country in secret and covertly. I think the next picture is going to be pretty interesting for people because they want to see what these antenna look like. This is the antennas. It's a 25 milliwatt transmitter. They're on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, emitting radiation, high levels of radiation, point to point. So that's from antenna to antenna. And I said before, the maximum exposure to 200-pound male is 1 milliwatt for a short period of time. These are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is no evidence at all to show that these devices are safe. Not only that, the picture on the right you'll see, the manufacturer even says that this transmitter has to be a minimum several meters. We have dozens of photographs where these lights are right up next to people's homes. Now, the signal, the 868, that's how I knew how this was really suspicious. The 868, 870 megahertz frequency was specifically developed for 3D mapping through concrete walls. Why would your government want to put something like this next to your home? It travels through that brickwork with ease. Nothing stops it. There are some things that can limit its radiation emission, but not a great deal.
Well, like trees.
Like a tree. Anyone close to it, close to that problem. Well, it's trees when they get wetty, and that's the problem. If a tree's dry, a tree isn't a conductor. It blocks it will attenuate a lot of this signal. However, where the real problem comes when it gets wet. When it gets wet, it takes the signal to Earth. And
so what we can expect to see is when we have the rainfall in the UK, if there are trees in the cities that have the 5G system in place, and we have autonomous vehicles using 5G, we can expect to see absolute chaos.
Chaos, total and absolute chaos. But I'd like to draw people's attention to the picture on the left-hand side. Here we have two birds in close proximity to that transmitter. That will kill them. That is a reckless environmental crime. There is no excuse in law. You know, in like as you said before, all these trees have to come down for 100% 5G coverage. 100% of the trees have to come down. Surrey University did a bit of research on this, and 100%. Are we going to allow all the trees to come out? Now, another part of the problem with these antennas at close proximity is the electron volt charge. A 25 milliwatt transmitter has a 307 electron volts at the first square meter. And what that does, that positively charges air. Now, the next image shows what charged air causes the human, damages the immune system. There's a full list there. Negative charged air is normally beneficial to biology. Positively charged air causes oxidative stress. That leads to cancer. It damages your immune system. Like I said, there's an extensive list there of the damage.
Well, now, and the headaches one, I mean, I'm sure that there are many people watching this who can relate to this because, I mean, I, for one, know that if I omit to put my phone onto flight mode before I go to sleep, then there is the distinct probability that I will wake up in the morning with a slight headache. And in fact, if I do wake up with a headache, the first thing I do is go to my phone and then curse because I forgot to turn it off the previous night. And this is something that I'm hearing from a lot of people. So, you know, the nausea, the insomnia and the headaches are something that is becoming quite prevalent just because of the saturation of existing phone signals. And yet, of course, when we get to 5G, it is literally 100 times the data rate of what we have at the moment. So invariably, there will always be some people who are not affected, but an increasing number of people will be affected. And like the Piedmont Fire Service, You know, they may not realize what's causing the problems initially until someone comes along and says, hey guys, you got these transmitters right outside your house or your place of work. Is it any wonder that you're suffering from memory loss, from stress, starting to get into depression? I mean, what we see unfolding here is literally a negative health nightmare.
It's absolutely horrendous, Ian, and the short-term memory loss. We know the science shows that leads to Alzheimer's. We've got an explosion in dementia, Alzheimer's, neurological disorders. We'll come on to that later. But the long-term effect of this anybody that suffers short-term memory loss, that's potentially this microwave radiation, which will then lead to Alzheimer's. And your government have already told you, we're going to take your home from you. We're going to take your assets if you start to suffer from dementia. But going back to Sheffield, Ian, and we'll come on to that later as well, the contracts that these councils have with these private corporations are in secret. There's if we look at the next slide, where Gateshead Council's press release in 2017 shows that the North East bid to be national test bed. This was in 2017. So there's two articles there, both identifying the North East. Now we know that they spent over £18 million attaching these new LED and transmitter systems. And so anybody who's had new LED streetlights, believers, if the transmitter operates on an 868 or your local authority tells you it's a control management system, it's most probably 5G. All right? The press release in 2018, Gateshead Council are denying the test, denying this national test. And they also state quite clearly here, there's no scientific evidence or basis, there's no credible evidence to show that these devices are harmful. In fact, what they say, no risk, absolutely no risk. And they are referring to Health Protection England and the WHO. Well, in the next slide, Protection Health England have identified LED street lighting in dangers to the public. So that's blatantly not true.
Well, by the way, Public Health England shares an office at Porton Down with on biological warfare.
Ian, if PHE think those LED streetlights could damage your eyesight, believers, they're going to do more than damage your eyesight. In fact, there's a recent paper just come out of Spain showing that these LED lights, it's the bit I really do know quite a bit about, at 450 nanometers, pulse modulated light increases prostate cancer and breast cancer. So these LED streetlights most certainly are extremely hazardous. The fact that PHE's even said there's a health effect, they're absolutely
exactly. They're covering their butt basically by saying there's a negative health effect. And of course, people have the choice. They can ignore this warning and say, no, it's just an exaggeration. No, it's just rampant conspiracy. But, here we are in 2018. If this goes ahead, by the year 2525, wasn't that, the 2525, that was a Chicago song. In the year 2025, then we are literally going to be in such a dystopian nightmare with everybody having such short-term memory loss that they can't actually remember what it was that they were supposed to be leaving home for. So pretty much everyone's going to be, reliant on droids to do whatever they want to do. And my God, we're literally seeing the situation created where Ray Kurzweil, actually can achieve his dream of getting people to download their consciousness into the mainframe, because if they don't, it's going to be corrupted thanks to the prevalence of the radio frequencies.
I think that if we don't get this 5G crime stop within the next 2 or 3 years, most people will be dead or will have been exposed to that much microwave radiation. They will all develop cancer and they will all be near death. Because as you know, it's not really, you're not allowed to cure cancer in this country. You can treat it. And as soon as people run out of any of their resources, then obviously they'll withdraw the treatment. Because NHS is crippling under this criminal activity. The mental health costs are absolutely stratospheric. In fact, if we move on to a few more of these slides, Ian, I know we're going to be pushed for time. Here's another article. Even the WHO states that these microwave radiation transmissions increase the risk of brain cancer. So, just confirming the lies that councils and their executives come out with. This next image shows the impact of microwave radiation on a child's head. This is from the same device. And the reason I bring this up is because the head scientist, or what I've been told the head scientist at PHE, this organisation that says that LED streetlights aren't really safe, they said that my assumption that microwave radiation has a more deleterious effect on smaller living things, obviously let's go back to the insects, they said it's not based in science. Well, this article, this graphic was the IAEA's graphic, an organisation far more expert in this particular subject than PHE. And it shows exactly, what I was saying and confirms that, which begs the question, how can PHE be employing such thick scientists? I mean, they're not scientists at all, they're just criminals trying to uphold some false premise that these microwave radiation signals don't have a more deleterious effect.
Well, especially when we take into account the research on the screen there. Here, this is from 1996 from the University of Utah. So, that's 22 years ago. So, the establishment has had plenty of time to comprehend the effects of RF on all organic life, and consequently, I would say that they are intending to use that to their advantage.
Well, Ian, the next image shows the exposure from smart meters, because obviously this is all tied in with your 5G. This is because obviously the backhaul and the data from your smart meter goes through that neural network. There's 3 images here, all showing damage. This is bloods in vitro, all showing damage to human blood from smart meters. These are the smart meters that everybody, they're telling people are safe, perfectly all right. They are serious, that's serious damage to blood. But the image on the right-hand side is what is called blood stacking. It's relay. It's what's called blood stacking. And this ties into what we're seeing in Gateshead, which is the next image. We're seeing dozens and dozens of reports of children being assaulted in their bedrooms from this type. This is absolutely disgusting. This is not Great Britain. This is not the country my forefathers fought for, or any human out there who can look at these pictures. We know what causes this. It's called relay. This is the administration of a noxious substance on children who are more impacted by this radiation. The picture on the right-hand side shows a young chap, Alfie, and the mask just outside his bedroom window. We've measured the radiation in these people's bedrooms. It's 3,000 millivolts. These children are being assaulted. And I mean, obviously, a larger person like myself and a bigger head, I'm a lot more safe than these children. Are we really going to allow our children to be assaulted in this way? I mean, this is just absolutely unbelievable.
Well, somebody who lives in Gateshead wrote to me a few days ago and said, was I aware that Gateshead is becoming the childhood nosebleed capital of the country? And, I mean, I remember, when I was at school, every now and again, a kid would get a nosebleed and it would just manifest. It wouldn't necessarily appear to be caused by anything, but it was, it happened, but it was a rare occurrence. But this lady was explaining that, it's getting to the point now where kids in the classes are getting nosebleeds on almost a daily basis.
And anybody that exposes any child to microwave radiation, as Barry Trower stated, should go to prison and have the key thrown away. And we have headmasters exposing children to microwave radiation in their classrooms. One of the things that's really important here for everybody to understand, all of the regulatory standards are ascertained from the transmission of one device in relation to a human. People are being exposed to multiple devices in these environments, which can take them well over the international regulated guidelines. Those guidelines, by the way, are well over many of the peer-reviewed published papers that show the damage from non-thermal microwave radiation, because the international standards only apply, I call them the cooking value. Your government and your agencies believe that as long as you're only cooking a little bit from the microwave radiation, you're fine. That is complete and utter criminal behaviour of these organisations, because their scientists, as the world's leading scientists, the guys who have written this, they're demanding a moratorium on 5G, know that the evidence out there, the published scientific evidence, shows significant biological damage well below the thermal impact. This next image.
Well, just on that, in France, Wi-Fi is banned in any school or public building which is used on a regular basis by children. I think it's under the age of 7.
Yeah, well, this next image most certainly dispels the notion that there's, this microwave radiation only causes damage by cooking. This is non-thermal impact from microwave radiation, and this is work by Martin Pal, Professor Martin L. Pal. I suggest anyone who wants to get up to speed on this criminal activity of the state, watch Martin Pal. He's got some very interesting lectures he does on YouTube. You'll soon find him. Very interesting. And this shows significant neurological damage from non-thermal microwave radiation. In fact, the next image, even more interesting, we've got schools buckling under 70,000. When did we, Ian, ever go to school and have children self-harming? I've never heard of it.
Never. I can honestly say that I was not aware of any kid, certainly not in my class and not in my school. Self-harming was absolutely unheard of. I think the first time I came across anyone who self-harmed was in the late 80s, which coincidentally would actually coincide with the first mobile phone networks.
Yeah, it is. It fits in exactly at that time. There's a total media blackout on what the cause is. We know the cause is Wi-Fi. The science says it's the Wi-Fi. The only government and the agencies, the education department, are in total and absolute denial of what the cause is. And this is crippling schools. It's costing taxpayers. These children can't study correctly. I spoke with Bristol University, the image on the right-hand side. I spoke with Bristol University when I found out that the experimental unlawful trial of these waveforms on the campus. And as we can see, suicide rates have rocketed. Bristol University heads for meltdown after student deaths. I think we've got a report at 13. However, that in real terms extrapolates to over 30 children at that university that have committed suicide. Because obviously, as we all know, coroners will only sign off as it being a suicide. It's normally about 30% of cases. So where, you throw off a bridge or something where it is, incontrovertible that is exactly what has happened, because coroners do not like to attribute, certain deaths to, it's really got to be confirmed. So
yeah, so otherwise it would be death by misadventure.
Exactly. So we've got a meltdown at the University of Bristol. We've got a school meltdown, and that was one of the government's first university test beds. And here, this next image, this is a smoking gun. The reason I call it the smoking gun, increase in stroke, we know that head size plays a significant part in protection and body density and body size in protection from this microwave radiation. And this evidence shows that where there was a 38% increase in young women suffering from stroke in the same and from the same geolocations, and a massive increase in young men, 15%, we know that by and large, women have got smaller heads. So we know that microwave radiation increases blood pressure. This is scientifically documented. It increases blood pressure, but it also breaks down the blood-brain barrier. In fact, it was actually used as a therapy to deliver drugs that couldn't pass across the blood-brain barrier. So microwave radiation frequencies were used so that that drug could be passed across. So we've got microwave radiation, bombarding people's blood-brain barrier, increasing their blood pressure. And there's the evidence: the smoking gun, stroke, the debilitating effect on the economy in that part of the world is absolutely catastrophic.
But the other fact here is, Mark, that this actually also supports the or adds to the weight of the hypothesis for the 11.3% increase in deaths in the first 16 weeks of the year, which, as I said earlier, weren't the usual suspects of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s plus. It was people in this age group, 18 to 45. People who you wouldn't necessarily expect, or the age range where you wouldn't necessarily expect to see an increase in deaths.
Yeah. Well, certainly, and I mean, this next image, this is, secret authorities, the secret contracts that they won't even release under freedom of information requests from the press, destroying protected trees across country and, across the country in towns, villages, etc. I mean, these are images from Sheffield. But these trees were planted by Victorians, as I said before. It was to reduce the toxicity levels in towns so people could go to work and work in a productive way and weren't sick all the time. This is an environmental crime. It's a humanitarian crime, because under humanitarian laws, we are all able to live in a toxic-free environment. This is going to cause significant toxicity levels in these particular environments. Now, if anybody doesn't think that we're under attack here, these next couple of slides are going to really explain that we are. This next slide shows Ofcom's proposal on the unknown, untested risk from 60 gigahertz. Now we know 60 gigahertz is attenuated in the oxygen molecule more than any other. So it's basically blocked by oxygen. Doesn't travel very far. Now, if you overexcite an oxygen molecule, there's two things can happen. One thing, you may not be able to pick it up in your hemoglobin. The other thing, you may actually disassociate the bond, which would then leave free oxygen atoms to attach to other oxygen molecules to create O3, which at 50 parts per million will kill any biological living thing. Now, this part of the spectrum, believe it or not, sell these parts of the spectrum for hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds. Does anybody think there's anything suspicious about the fact that Ofcom is going to give this away free? because it looks very, very suspicious to me. So this is a free part of the spectrum. And the next image shows the O2 molecule. And this is proposed as 60 gigahertz higher frequency, which these high gain antennas can produce. And I've seen some very, very worrisome images of devices being attached to lampposts, not the ones in our near locality, but in other parts of the world, that look very much like reactors that can cause this and emit this 60 gigahertz range frequency, and look like reactors that could potentially gasify the air with O3 and kill everything. Absolutely annihilate everything.
So O2 is the UK arm of Telefonica, the Spanish telecoms company. And of course, Telefonica is the company that is in bed with Amy, which is the civil engineering contractor that is tasked with culling 17,500 trees in Sheffield, effectively to make way for the 5G network for Telefonica, so that Telefonica, in its guise as O2, can change its logo from O2 to O3, and therefore actually spell out to people that it is toxic.
It's toxic. In this next image here, this shows, this is the International Humanitarian Court, Council of Europe. This isn't the EU, by the way, it's the Council of Europe. This was actually set up after the Second World War to take action against criminals in the German military who had fancied just gassing a load of people just because they fancied it. And they've already identified the potential dangers from electromagnetic fields and their effect on the environment and in humans. And the reason for this article was because the significant increase in brain cancers that they had seen and have been identified in young children. And so we all know the Council of Europe basically recognised this. And what I'm going to say to people, this is a really interesting idea. There's a chap down in London who had his home burgled. Now, obviously, it was a property crime. He stabbed that burglar to death, and that he's walked out of a police station. Now, when you start to look at some of the information that we put out there today, how far can we go? How far can we go when our countrymen are under attack, our children are being assaulted, our democracy is under attack? How far can we go as free men in this country and women to, what I believe, stop this outrageous attack on us?
Well, Mark, let's just go back to that last slide a second, because this is absolutely fundamental on so many levels. So this is the International Humanitarian Court's Council of Europe in 2011. And the quote here from the Parliamentary Assembly, it says, the Parliamentary Assembly has repeatedly stressed the importance of states' commitment to preserving the environment and environmental health as set out in many charters, conventions, declarations and protocols since the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment and the Stockholm Declaration in 1972. The Assembly refers to its past work in this field, namely Recommendation 1863 on environment and health, better prevention of environmental related health hazards from 2009, on drafting an additional protocol to the European Convention on Human Rights concerning the right to a healthy environment, and Recommendation 1430 on access to information, public participation in environmental decision making and access to justice, i.e. implementation of the Aarhus Convention. And of course, in just a few weeks, I will be in court in Manchester as litigant in person, challenging the attempt by Quadrilla to establish an injunction preventing any public participation in effective protest. Thereby, what they're trying to do is effectively prevent the wider awareness of the environmental impacts of fracking in this case. But if Cuadrilla are awarded this injunction, then of course the ramifications are enormous, because it would simply provide the precedent for every other industry, and of course 5G is following hot on the heels here, for any other industry to seek an injunction to prevent any dissent in direct contravention of this International Humanitarian Court's Council of Europe directive. But like you say, Mark, it just needs people to step up to the plate and literally challenge this in whatever way they feel they are able. And, we are on the cusp in the UK, in my opinion, of a constitutional crisis, because literally within the next few weeks, it will become apparent as to whether there is any attempt to uphold the Constitution, i.e. the fundamental freedoms that we think we take for granted in this country, or whether we are literally de facto rolling into a corporatist nightmare where the corporations have absolute precedence over all life. So, Mark, it's very interesting times that we live in.
Well, it is interesting times, and what I'm going to say, there was a very interesting case, I think about 2 weeks ago, in the Sunday Times, and it was a judge in a case where he put the prosecution barrister on the stand. The defence barrister cross-examined him. The guy passed out. Then put a police officer on the stand. Defence barrister questioned her. She passed out. And I believe there are elements within the establishment, good people who want to uphold the rule of law. We must rally round those people. We must give them support, and we must fight this 5G. 5G, fortunately for most people today, we are 3 to 4, 5 years away from this dystopian plan. We must start to fight back in every way, shape, and form. And what I mean by that, get organised, get talking. This is real. When we started the conversation, I want everybody to share this video, share it on your platforms, put it on your Facebooks. I know that's the battle space of our adversaries. Email all your friends. Tell them to watch it. This is real. Not made up, not a fantasy. We're not sitting here talking because for the good of our health. I mean, if anything, my health is extremely enriched from making people aware of what's going on. However, I don't have any choice, because under international humanitarian laws, I'm obliged under law to act. Inaction is a crime. This is a crime against humanity. It's been perpetrated against us. Mainstream media have been hacked. They're not covering it. This is most certainly a crime. It is up to the people to make enough noise, to get enough people within the establishments to start to take action.
Thanks, Mark. Well, it's one final word. I just want to draw people's attention to this truly outstanding website here. This is 5gexposed.com. And let me just see if I can actually bring it up on the screen here so that it's live. And what you see here, this is pulled together by an absolutely committed activist, or he's become an activist. And this is Brian Snellgrove from the other end of the country from you, Mark. He's in the south of England. And this website has, I think, only been up for around about 7 weeks or so. But it's become one of the premier resources regarding 5G. And I draw people's attention. I mean, it's well worth spending some time exploring this site. But in particular, look at the events. Because on the events here, if I can pull it up, there we go. On the events, what Brian has listed on the site is all the events that he's aware of where people are already trying to raise awareness of the pernicious 5G agenda. And, you know, what I seriously hope is that, you know, if these videos are still up on social media in 10 years' time, that people aren't looking at them with tears in their eyes, wondering why it is that despite the efforts of a few people to raise awareness of these issues, humanity effectively just walked into the dystopian nightmare with its minds firmly shut. So, you know, we are at the cusp here, a very, very important cusp. And whilst, you know, there are an increasing number of people taking action, stepping up to the plate, and whilst the establishment is making more and more effort to make sure that people don't have the time or the resources, even if they have the inclination, to challenge their agenda, those of us that have found a way to do it need to keep doing it, and we can only do it with your support. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you so much for all the support that you do provide to those individuals and those organizations that are doing their level best to spread the awareness and encourage people to do their own research. And this is the critical factor, because it is only when people come to their own realization of what's occurring that it becomes their truth. Until then, it's simply hearsay, conjecture, or conspiracy theory or whatever. It's only when they actually realize it. It's when the seeds that are being sown germinate, then they realize it. And when they realize the effect on their children and their grandchildren, then maybe, just maybe, that will be sufficient motivation to challenge the socio-psychopathic global corporatist agenda. So what happens over the next few years depends very much on each and every one of us. Thank you for joining me this evening, and I'll be back in a few weeks with another episode of Humanity versus Insanity. Thank you, Mark, for joining us this evening, and good luck with keep spreading the word, and we're right there with you. Good night.